Hey there, and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete, and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Anomaly Sea Ice Challenge with the transhumanist Paragons of Pandroth. Last time we left off, after attuning the Zeem to the Void monolith, attracting new and stronger entities, the first of which, a Nocuosphere, we encountered pretty much immediately. For now, it is safely in our containment cell and causing no trouble, unlike the golden cube that several of our colonists are slowly getting obsessed by, while we are frantically studying it, hoping to find ways to destroy it. We also dealt with a mech cluster, a bunch of side stealers, turned Lauren into our second mechanitor and Elpis into a psycaster, so lots of progress was made. Let's see what this episode has in store for us. To get us started, we make more progress on the Nocuosphere, now learning that we can in fact activate it and send it out to battle against our enemies, and should the need for it arise, that's definitely something I would like to try, but for now we'll keep it nice and contained. We then learn that Lauren's obsession with the cube has intensified. I believe I did not actually show that last episode, but yes, Lauren has joined Ellie and Maniac as the colonist fascinated by the cube, and I'm sure it's only a matter of time before we see more names join that list. Now, partially thanks to last episode's mech cluster, our supply of steel and components has increased somewhat, and let's ensure that especially those components keep coming in as we now construct a long-range mineral scanner. This costs us 2 advanced components, but I think it's well worth it, as we can set the scanner to specifically search for a particular resource, components included. And that's exactly what we'll do. Afterwards, we also slightly upgrade our hydroponics farm once more. After all, we do have room for a few more basins, and well, we might have some guests coming in soon, so a bit of extra food might be useful. As Lauren then receives a shoot frenzy inspiration, we begin another small construction project. I think it's time that we more clearly designate an outside area for our base and close that off from the inside, just for some slightly better protection. Afterwards, we are then moving our production facilities out of our multi-purpose common/sleeping/research room, just so we have one designated space where our colonists can work and another where they can sleep and just hang out. It does take a little while to get everything sorted, but in the end we have ourselves a lovely new lab and workshop with plenty of room to expand. In the evening, more work on the hydroponics basins, and just like that, another day has finished, just as Lauren suffers her first cube-related mental break and joins Maniac and Ellie as an eager constructor of cube sculptures. On the anomaly research side of things, we have now unlocked the Summon Flesh Beasts ritual, potentially very useful as an added layer of defense, or if we just need to shoot something for twisted meat. Our next target then will be the bioferrite generator, a way to produce power from bioferrite, which we have quite a lot of, but in order to unlock it, we first need to unlock the electro harvester, so let us focus all of our efforts on that for the time being. During the night, shredding and smelting have then also resulted in a good influx of steel, and shortly after midnight we might also gain another colonist as a transport pod crashes on the sea ice. Inside we find a 20-year-old woman with passions for mining and research. However, she also sports the volatile and chemical interest traits, not to mention that she's incapable of dumb labor. So perhaps not an ideal candidate to join us permanently. Still, for now we will take her in. After all, fixing her up seems like the transhumanist way of sorts, although her injuries will be treated by Volek's coagulate ability, just to ensure she's stable and that we don't waste medicine. Keep in mind that about half of our colony is also still suffering from fibrous mechanites, and those need to be treated regularly. On the next morning then, we begin the construction of two death rest caskets, because today we are in fact going to turn a second colonist into a sanguophage. And quite fittingly, the sun goes out just as we start working, hopefully a good sign for the future of our vampires. Now, in terms of materials, we don't quite have enough for any extra death rest facilities, but those are definitely planned. For the moment, however, we focus on maxing out our food output and also put down 2 more bedrolls. An ominous thunderstorm then also signals that it might be time to provoke the void yet again, so Elpis does what Elpis does best. Let's see if we have increased our wealth enough so that something actually shows up. In the meantime, our guest has decided that she wants to leave after making a full recovery, and I think we will let her. No need to keep her around if she doesn't want to, and she didn't harm us, so I see no need to experiment on her. The void provocation then comes to an end, but even several hours later nothing has shown up, despite the fact that colony wealth already sits above 100,000. Now that might also simply be because we attracted something hidden, but it's definitely a bit weird that this ritual reliably fails to produce any new entities. Now, be that as it may, I have also just discovered another reason why our guest would be better off leaving us. Her ideology includes the flesh purity meme, and that is obviously a massive conflict with our transhumanist beliefs. And by the way, no, we can unfortunately not use her in the chronophagy ritual or any other rituals. Only colonists and prisoners can be selected for that. A few hours later then, good news from the stables. Yak Jude has given birth, and so we can once again give out a name from the list of Patreon supporters in the naming rights tier and above. This time we'll go with Elijah for the new offspring, who will hopefully fare better than the other men in his lineage. On the following morning, we then finally construct a bioferrite shaper, which we are then promptly using with our crafter Lauren to make a few ghoul enhancements. We unlocked those last time around, I believe, and so our two ghouls, Jay and Midnight, will now both receive some protective plating. Especially for Jay, this is a massive bonus, as it further reduces the damage he receives, which is already halved because of his tough trait, so from now on Jay will only receive a quarter of the damage he'd normally take. Now, admittedly, this comes at the cost of reduced movement speed for our ghouls, but because of the cold, they are not really roaming around too much anyway, so even with them being slightly slower, we should get them to where they need to be just in time. Needless to say, Midnight receives the same upgrade shortly after, and then we learn that the Golden Cube has expanded its influence on Nazim. And so that means that our primary entity researcher is about to become obsessed by the Cube too. Not exactly a great perspective, but at the moment there is little we can do about it. And so instead, let's stick to the plan for today. Last episode we received this quest right here, asking us to take in 3 refugees, and while we are raiders, we are not bad people, so let's take them in and see what we're dealing with. Up first, a 30-year-old, sickly, delicate, chemically interested woman with several passions, but no skills really standing out. Still, she could be useful in a variety of ways, I think. Up next, a 74-year-old, neurotic, psychically hypersensitive and lazy, and also pretty good at arts, animals and shooting things. Definitely not a bad person to have around, even if she's getting up there age-wise. Finally then, a 32-year-old careful shooter, who is in fact horrible at shooting things in the first place. He can do some crafting though, which might be of use to keep our component production going. At least their ideology is somewhat fitting. Supremacist is close to Raider and Ritualist is very close to what we already are, so this should hopefully cause no trouble. Health-wise, we also have several scars and 2 drug addictions to deal with, so we'll see how this goes for the next 15 days. That's how long they want to stick around. In the evening then, a combat supplier trade ship passes by, but Ellie does not exactly exchange combat goods with them. Instead, we simply purchase components. Yes, there are a few other items of interest for sale here, but financially they would almost ruin us, and I don't think we need to go that far just yet. So instead it's time for Midnight to now also receive Ghoul Barbs, an offensive improvement, increasing melee damage by 50%, albeit once again at the cost of slightly reduced movement speed. In Midnight's case, however, that reduction is already countered by the Jogger trait, and again, I don't believe that it will become a huge problem for us anyway. And with our ghouls enhanced, it is then time to focus on our colonists again. Lauren is now making a prosthetic leg for none other than herself, as she is in fact currently still sporting a wooden peg leg. And while that's underway, Elpis introduces our 3 temporary colony members to the joy of drawing animals from the void. Together with Nightshade, there is only a 5% chance of this ritual ending in manhunters, so it's almost guaranteed to be something useful. Well, almost. In this case, it was not enough, and our guests already catch some suspicion for their role in messing up the ritual here. Either way, a few moments later, a large pack of manhunting foxes enters the map. And well, let's test out just how good our new and improved ghouls are. We'll put them on the front lines, together with Maniac, who is wielding that masterwork plasteel spear, while we also have grenades in the back and a whole lot of other firepower. Let's see how this goes. Okay, definitely better than expected here. No injuries yet apart from Jay, who can definitely take it. Our gunfire has also destroyed a section of wall, unfortunately, but we can quickly fill that hole before Maniac is in serious danger. And there we go, that should be most of the animals dead. The only real danger now becomes the rot stink from their corpses. One more reason why I really don't enjoy manhunting packs all that much, as there is essentially no reward whatsoever for actually fighting them. Now, with the threat taken out, Lauren begins the construction of a bigger and better mech gestator, while Nightshade also falls under the cube's influence, thus leaving only Elpis and Volek as the only colonists not affected. To add to our worries, we also learn that the Nochiosphere might not be as harmless as it seems. It looks like, despite our suppression efforts, the sphere is becoming increasingly unstable. Nazim theorizes that eventually our suppression will stop working entirely, at which point it is then probably high time to release the sphere to avoid it releasing itself upon us. That is all still a few days into the future though. For now, the rot stink does unfortunately affect one of our guests who has now developed lung rot, although that's nothing we can't cure with Elpis' medical talents. The large mech gestator then completes, and we will now use it to gestate a scyther with that standard subcore that we, well, extracted from our skip actor a while back. However, before Lauren can begin, we first install that prosthetic leg. That means she will be unconscious for a little while, but once the sedative wears off, she can begin making her first mech. Ellie then goes on yet another food binge, nothing unusual there, and shortly after, our crashed refugee is finally fully healed again, and thus decides to say goodbye. Just as we tell Lauren to fire up the mech gestator, one of our guests also begins to suffer from dark visions. Nothing too dangerous, but overall I'd imagine the mood in our colony must be rather anxious at the moment, with half of our people fully obsessed by the cube, while the other half tries to keep things together. Now, despite her obsession, Lauren then manages to get the scyther creation process started. However, unlike with the smaller, less complex mechanoids that we have gestated in the past, this one will take slightly longer, 2 cycles of 1.5 days each. So it will be a while until Lauren runs around with her own personal army of mechanized soldiers, and for the moment we have bigger concerns anyway. No, not poor Silver, now also suffering food poisoning, but this right here, Nazim has just found a strip of fleshy tissue. Now, unfortunately, we all know what that means by now. Somebody in this colony is infected by a Metalhorror. And, well, our colonists know it too, which is why I think this right here is a sensible reaction. They are now immediately imprisoning their 3 guests. Now, this might seem drastic at first, but imagine surviving the threat of a Metalhorror once, and then, just a few days after 3 strangers arrive, you find signs of another one. I feel like it's not too far-fetched to suspect our 3 guests of bringing the entity into our midst, so we're keeping them isolated for now, and we will interrogate them to find out more. Unfortunately, until we find a second strip, we also can't perform the surgery to identify who's affected, so for now all we can do is wait until another piece of flesh appears. Nonetheless, we have Ellie analyze the first strip here to at least reveal the biosignature, but again, for now that doesn't really help us much. Ellie's interrogation attempts also remain fruitless for now, despite her level 12 social skill, and so let us occupy ourselves with some more experiments. All by himself, Elpis will now perform another skip abduction, partially because that one scyther will of course not remain the last one, so we need more subcores, but also because we might have a few other uses for this poor fellow here. An ugly cannibal Itakin pirate, so definitely no friendly, and thus a good target to be imprisoned for later. Before we can do something with him, however, one of our guests rebels against his prison sentence, and with good reason, I'd imagine. Nonetheless, we send out our Ghoul pacifying force immediately to put him back in his place. Another coagulate from Volek that ensures that he doesn't die, we don't want that, and in the meantime we have also received another quest that I think we will accept. Yes, it is another crashed shuttle, and no, none of the rewards here are necessarily fantastic, but I think we can find a use for an archite capsule, as gene modding is definitely something we want to do more in the not-too-distant future. And so there's the shuttle as well as its 4 inhabitants, 3 of which actually need to survive this, only the heavily armored Janissary is expendable. Reason enough, I think, to get over there ASAP and wait for the enemies to arrive. While we do so, we can also already deconstruct the old shuttle, and then we are informed that Volek's genes have finished regrowing. So, once all of this is over, we can implant his sanguophage abilities into someone else, and I already know who that's going to be. But for the moment, let's fight some Neanderthals. All with green caps, all sporting Neolithic melee weapons. This should hopefully not be too difficult, even if we don't have any cover to hide behind. Still, that one Janissary and our ghouls provide enough of a distraction to keep the enemies away from our shooters, who, as expected, make quick work of the threat. The result then, a completed quest, a sizable haul of pemmican and smeltable weapons, but no prisoners, all in all a solid outcome. So then, let's get to it. I think this comes as no surprise, our second proper sanguophage of this series will be Elpis. I think you have connected the dots already. My plan for Elpis is for him to become a psycaster surpassing even the powers of light from the last series, and making him a sanguophage is an essential part of that plan. Furthermore, the coagulate ability also nicely corresponds with his duty as a doctor, not to mention that sanguophage are just overall pretty powerful, something a transhumanist might certainly not be opposed to. So, with Elpis currently in a brief state of unconsciousness, the next psychic ritual will therefore now be helmed by Maniac, and that was actually the plan all along, as we are now performing another chronophagy using that abductee as a target. This will reduce a further 20 years from Maniac's biological clock, turning the once frail old man into a young 41-year-old. My hope is that this also cures 1 or 2 more of Maniac's scars, ideally the ones causing him the most pain, as that is currently still negatively affecting his mood at all times. And indeed, while our beaten-up prisoner suffers an infection, Maniac does in fact get rid of one of his ritual scars, a relic from his time back with the cult of Jinx. Now, the pain is still there, but that's mostly because of the fibrous mechanites. Overall, Maniac is now in the prime of his life, albeit possessing the wisdom of an elder. Potentially good traits to make him the colony's leader? Well, I think that's for you to decide. But after 15 episodes, it might indeed be time for our Paragons of Pandroth to elect someone to spearhead the operation. So let me know in the comments down below who you think that should be. Today's episode then ends with Nazim unlocking the Electro Harvester. So up next, we work on that bioferrite generator, although being an advanced project it will take some time, and we can unlock the Draw Shamblers ritual with our basic study progress in the meantime. And so, there we are. We have survived another episode out on the sea ice, although things are definitely getting spicy with the cube, the Nociosphere, and a new Metalhorror in our ranks too. Very fittingly then, today's fan art by Risoslav also depicts Ellie and her cube obsession, something that we are hopefully able to fix in one of the upcoming episodes. For today then, let's make the cuts. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.